This happened a few weeks ago. I went to a friend's housewarming party. It was nice to reconnect after a long semester of teaching. The house was a charming Victorian with a big wraparound porch, and I felt excited. After some chatting and snacks, we decided to play hide and seek. It seemed like a normal, fun thing to do. I remember counting to 20 while the others scattered. I could hear their laughter, but when I turned back, something caught my eye. I noticed a strange figure looking through the window. The figure looked old-fashioned, as if it were from the past. I turned to point it out, but when I looked back, it was gone. Maybe it was just my imagination. I brushed it off, but the feeling stuck with me. The game continued, but something felt odd. I squeezed into a closet, trying to hide. I felt like I wasn't alone. There was a low whistle, almost from nowhere. The lights flickered while I counted. I told myself it was just a faulty bulb, but it left me uneasy. When I emerged, I found an old photo on the wall. It showed kids playing in the backyard. One kid's face was scratched out. The chills creeping up my spine would not go away. This wasn't any simple game. I started doubting everything. The laughter of my friends sounded distant, almost haunting. I suddenly found myself wondering about the history of the house. I felt drawn to the figure I saw earlier. What if it was connected to what I was experiencing? Was I the only one who noticed it? Everyone else seemed oblivious. As I kept hiding and seeking, it felt like I was being watched. I had my friends nearby, but there was something else lurking in the shadows. The energy in the air felt thick and strange that night. The whispers carried through the hallways. The air was heavy at times, and I realized that the game had turned into something different. In the final round, I crouched under the stairs. A cold draft washed over me, and my heart raced. Suddenly, I heard a noise. I looked up and swear I saw the figure again. This time it was clearer, standing at the end of the hallway. I felt frozen. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I blinked, and it was gone. I stepped out of my hiding spot, feeling shaky. I looked for my friends. I needed to tell them what I saw, but their laughter remained cheerful, blissfully unaware. I left the party that night with more questions than answers. Had I really seen something? Maybe it was all in my head. I can still hear that laughter echoing in my mind. It makes me wonder if they ever truly left. Then someone asked, "Why are you still here?" I turned, but nobody was there. The next day, I couldn't shake off the unease from the party. I found myself scrolling through my phone, looking for distractions. Finally, I decided to call my friend Jake, who owned the house. I needed to know if he'd noticed anything strange. "Hey, did anything weird happen at your party?" I asked, trying to pick my words carefully.
Jake chuckled. "You mean besides the usual awkward small talk?" "Not really. Why? Did something happen to you?" I paused. "Well, I thought I saw something. A figure at the window." "Seriously?" he replied, surprised. "You should try living here. This place is like 100 years old. There are all kinds of stories about it. Some even say it's haunted." His joke didn't make me laugh. I felt a knot in my stomach. "What stories?" "Just the usual stuff," he said. "You know, kids who disappeared, strange noises at night. Nothing to worry about, though." I hung up, feeling more uneasy than before. If I was feeling this way, there had to be something to those stories. I spent the night searching online, trying to dig up any information about the house. My mind raced with possibilities. Then, as I scrolled through an old newspaper archive, I found something surprising. An article from the 1920s caught my eye. It mentioned the house and a tragic accident involving a group of children who had gone missing. Panic surged through me. Was it possible that the kids from the photo had something to do with this? I didn't sleep well that night. I tossed and turned, thinking about those children. The next day, I finally decided to return to Jake's house. I needed to confront my fears head-on. When I arrived, the sun was shining, but the air felt heavy. I walked up to the porch, still haunted by what I had experienced. Jake greeted me with a smile, his enthusiasm a stark contrast to my anxiety. "Glad to see you. Come on in," he said. As I stepped through the door, memories flooded back. Laughter, the odd figure, the fear I felt. I tried to focus, but kept glancing at the hallway where I first saw it. "Do you have any old books or records about the house?" I asked, wanting to learn more. Jake scratched his head. "Maybe in the attic, but it's pretty dusty up there. Why do you care?" "Just curious," I replied. We climbed the narrow staircase, dust motes dancing in the light. The attic door creaked open, revealing stacks of old boxes. It smelled musty, and I felt a shiver. My hands trembled as I began to rummage through the boxes. Then I found an old journal. The cover looked fragile, but I opened it anyway. Inside, someone had detailed strange occurrences. My heart raced as one entry caught my eye. "The laughter never fades. We play, but we can't leave." I froze. That was it. That was what I heard my friend saying. But before I could gather my thoughts, I heard something behind me. A whisper clearly saying, "Why are you still up here?" I spun around, but there was nobody there. The hair on my neck stood up. I clutched the journal tightly, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about a game anymore. Something wanted me to know. And now it was clear I was not alone. My body felt heavy, as if I was being pulled down by an invisible weight. I stood there in the attic, gripping the journal, my breath shallow. The whisper still echoed in my ears.
Then, just as quickly as it started, the darkness retreated, revealing a figure standing at the end of the hall. A silhouette of a child with hollow eyes and a faint smile. "Come play with us," it repeated, and I froze. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood rooted to the spot, the spinning top clutched tightly in my hand. That was when I heard it, the sound of hurried footsteps behind me. Someone was in the house, and it wasn't Jake. I turned slowly, heart pounding, fearing what I might see. Shadows danced along the walls, but there, just at the edge of the light, stood a stranger, a tall figure in a dark coat. My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I croaked, trying to keep my voice steady. Behind me, Jake shifted nervously, but I could feel him inching closer. The figure stepped forward, and my stomach dropped. It felt like they were pulling me into their darkness, suffocating me with their presence. "I know you're looking for them," the figure said, their voice low and echoing in my mind. "But some games aren't meant to be played." "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, though a part of me wanted to run. The figure's face remained hidden, but I could feel their gaze piercing through the shadows. "Once you start seeking, there's no turning back," they warned. Each word dripped with menace. Suddenly, the child's laughter rang out again, shattering the tension. "Come play," it called, and a small hand appeared around the corner at the end of the hallway. I glanced back towards where the laughter was coming from, torn. I wanted to see who it was, but fear paralyzed me. "Please," I said, pleading with the figure. "I don't want any trouble. I just want to understand." "Understanding can lead to danger," the figure replied cryptically. "You've already found a piece of the game." They gestured toward the top I still held tightly. My fingers were starting to feel numb. "They aren't toys," the figure whispered, taking another step closer. My breath quickened, and I felt a mix of anger and fear surge through me. "Invitations to what?" I asked, feeling the weight of their words clawing at my mind. Before the figure could respond, the laughter grew louder. Then, without warning, the hallway lights flickered back to life. The figure vanished in an instant, leaving me with a chilling silence and a lingering sense of dread. "Where did they go?" Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper as he peered down the hallway. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we can't stay here." I took a step back, trying to catch my breath. My heart raced, and I felt the cold sweat trickling down my back. This was more than just a game. It was turning into something I didn't understand. That was when I heard it. The sound of soft footsteps approaching again, but they weren't from the direction of the child. I turned just as the door at the end of the hallway creaked open. A dark room waited beyond, and in it something glimmered, a toy just like the one in my hand. That's when I saw it, a shadow darting behind the doorframe, a child's figure. "Help us!" a voice whimpered from inside, sending a jolt of terror through me. As I stepped toward the open door, a sense of urgency fueled my movements. I had to know what was inside. My curiosity was overpowering, but so was a suffocating fear. Whatever was happening, it was far from over. I hesitated at the door, my heart pounding again, caught between fear and the desperate need to help. That voice, a child's voice, had triggered something deep within me. Slowly, I crossed the threshold into the room. The light flickered ominously above, illuminating the space just enough to reveal an old toy chest sitting in the corner, dust accumulating on its lid. I could feel Jake hovering behind me, his breath shallow, mirroring my own uncertainty. "What if someone is in there?" he whispered. "I know," I replied, glancing back at him, "but we can't ignore it." The laughter echoed again from the dark corners. It carried a playful tone that masked something unsettling. I stepped further inside, my fingers grazing the wall, expecting it to feel cold and unwelcoming. Instead, there was a strange warmth, almost as if the room itself were alive. The shadows seemed to shift, dancing in rhythm with my growing anxiety. I could almost hear the whispers of that figure again, warning me not to seek. "Help us!" the voice cried out once more from the chest, breaking my thoughts and pulling me back to reality. I swallowed hard and approached it, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But curiosity pushed me onward. I could feel my hands trembling as I reached for the lid, the soft wood warm against my palms. When I lifted it, the hinges creaked in protest, and a cloud of dust filled the air, causing me to cough. Inside, I found a jumble of toys, dolls with eyes that seemed to follow me, and stuffed animals missing patches of fur. But there, glistening on top was another toy just like the one in my pocket. It was a miniature spinning top, intricately painted with designs I couldn't quite decipher. "What's that?" Jake asked, glancing over my shoulder. "It's just a toy," I said, my voice shaky. But there was something unsettling about it, something that felt wrong. As I pulled it from the chest, a deep silence settled over the room. The laughter faded, leaving an eerie quiet in its place. Then I realized the other toys seemed to shift slightly, as if preparing for something. "Let's get out of here," Jake said suddenly, stepping back. His eyes were wide, betraying his fear. I could only nod, but before I could drop the top, the lights in the room flickered again, and then went out completely. Darkness enveloped us like a shroud, swallowing up every sliver of light. "Stay close," I hissed, heart racing as I held the top tightly. The room felt different now, suffocating and heavy, as if it were closing in on us. I fumbled around, trying to find the door. A soft giggle filled the darkness, chilling me to the bone. "Come play," it called again, playful yet somehow threatening, reverberating off the walls. "Who's there?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. Suddenly, a dim glow illuminated the far corner of the room. I squinted, my heart thumping loudly in my chest, and that's when I saw it. Another child's figure standing there, just at the edge of the light. Its face was obscured, but I could sense a smile on its lips. I should have felt relief. I didn't. I had stumbled onto something much bigger, something I wasn't ready for. And whatever game was being played, I knew I was now a part of it. My grip tightened around the top, and I took a shuddering breath, feeling the dread wash over me. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure stepped closer, and my breath caught again as the lights flickered overhead. Then everything went dark. The darkness was thick, swallowing all sense of direction. I stood frozen, ears straining to catch any subtle sound. My heart raced louder than ever, pounding against my ribcage. "Jake," I called softly, hoping he was still by my side. There was no answer. I turned, panic rising within me. "Jake!" I shouted, barely recognizing my own voice. I felt the spinning top slipping in my grip, but I tightened my hold. It was all I had to anchor me to reality. The giggle came again, closer this time, a sound that crawled down my spine. "Come play," it sang, as if it were coaxing me into an elaborate game. My breath hitched. "We just want to play." I took a cautious step forward, heart pounding, not knowing whether to seek the light or to retreat into the familiar darkness. And then I remembered the glow. I squinted into the void, hoping to see it again. My foot struck something hard, and I yelped, stumbling backward. The darkness felt alive, closing in around me. I fumbled to regain my balance as the giggle transformed into a wild child laughter. "You tripped," it teased, and I felt a surge of rage mixed with fear. "Show yourself," I shouted into the empty space, my voice trembling with a mix of defiance and dread. I felt foolish and exposed, but I had to confront whatever was out there. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, casting a dim glow across the room. But it wasn't enough to chase away the shadows that clung to the corners. That's when I saw it. A small form darting past the edge of the light. It was quick, too quick for me to focus on, but I could feel its energy. It had a life of its own. "Jake!" I cried again, loud enough to make my voice crack. Still, just silence answered. I felt an odd compulsion to follow the flicker, the movement that danced just out of reach. "Come play," the voice coaxed again, lingering in the air like a taunt. I shifted my weight, unsure whether to run or stay put. And then I remembered the glow. I squinted into the void, hoping to see it again. My foot struck something hard, and I yelped, stumbling backward. The darkness felt alive, closing in around me. I fumbled to regain my balance as the giggle transformed into a wild child laughter. "You tripped," it teased, and I felt a surge of rage mixed with fear. "Show yourself," I shouted into the empty space, my voice trembling with a mix of defiance and dread. I felt foolish and exposed, but I had to confront whatever was out there. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, casting a dim glow across the room. But it wasn't enough to chase away the shadows. That's when I saw it. A small form darting past the edge of the light. It was quick, too quick for me to focus on, but I could feel its energy. It had a life of its own. "Jake!" I cried again, loud enough to make my voice crack. Still, just silence answered. I felt an odd compulsion to follow the flicker, the movement that danced just out of reach. "Come play," the voice coaxed again, lingering in the air like a taunt. I shifted my weight, unsure whether to run or stay put. With a leap de faith, I moved toward the light, abandoning caution. "This isn't funny," I yelled, frustration mixing with fear as I took another step. I could feel the pull of the figure beckoning me. My heart raced. It was a game, but a game with no clear rules. As I neared the corner, the glow vanished again. I spun around, anxiety bubbling to the surface. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted into the darkness. My voice echoed back, but it offered no comfort. Then, out of the gloom, appeared another child's figure creeping into view. It moved slowly, deliberately. My stomach knotted. It was too unnatural, too calm. Once more, a smile, its eyes glinting in the flicker of the overhead light like polished stones. Before I could process what was happening, the figure pointed directly at me. It felt like a challenge. "Play with us," it said, a melodic tone holding an underlying threat. My breath caught. I realized I was out of my depth, and the rules of this game were shifting. Compelled to discover what lay beyond the unfamiliar, I moved closer, but the figure dwindled back into the shadows, leaving the air between us heavy with questions. "Jake?" I called once more, desperate to fill the empty space around me. But all I heard was the silence of the room, punctuated only by frantic whispers from the darkness. What had I stumbled into? Then an object caught my eye. Something on the floor reflected the light from above, twisting reflections against the walls. I bent down to get a better look. The spinning top lay there, rolling slightly as if it had been set into motion. It danced with a strange energy. I reached for it, but realized it was not just a toy. It was a key. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I had to know what doors it would open. I clutched the spinning top, the strange key, feeling its cool metal against my palm. Anxiety pooled in my stomach, but it was topped with a layer of curiosity.
What doors could a child's toy possibly unlock? I glanced around the dark room, wondering if any hidden doors awaited me. I took a deep breath and scanned the walls, looking for any signs of a keyhole. Maybe this place wasn't just a forgotten basement, but the setting for some bizarre hide-and-seek game. Suddenly, my heart leapt as I heard a soft whisper. "Find us." The giggle returned, sharper and more menacing than before. It seemed to swirl around me, echoing off the walls. "Come play with us." The unsettling urge to follow the sound gripped me tighter. "Jake!" I shouted again, hoping my panicked words might cut through the game. But my voice simply hung in the air like a sad refrain. I felt utterly alone in this whimsical nightmare. I noticed the edge of the room where the shadows resolved into more defined shapes. I stepped tentatively towards them. The light flickered back on, more solid this time, illuminating a door that hadn't been there before. An ornate wooden door stood ominously, its surface decorated with swirling patterns.
It screamed for attention. I approached cautiously, spinning the top in my hand like a good luck charm. Was this where it belonged? Would it turn the lock? Even as dread pooled in my chest, the allure of the door drew me in. I reached out, fingers barely grazing the brass handle. It felt warm underneath my touch, as if it were alive. Then I hesitated. What lay behind this door? More games? More shadowy figures? Or perhaps Jake? I turned around once more, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But the darkness swallowed the corners of the basement, leaving me standing alone with my fear. So much for safety in numbers. I took another steadying breath and pulled the door open. It creaked wide, revealing a long hallway, dimly lit. The air was thicker here, heavy with mystery. The whispers grew louder, forming snippets of songs that I felt too frightened to understand. "We're waiting," they sang sweetly, laced with something sinister. "Who's waiting?" I called, my voice echoing and bouncing back ominously. I stepped into the hallway, propelled by a mix of dread and hope. Each step felt like a defiance against all the irrational fears that gripped me. Once inside, I turned back to look at the door, half expecting it to vanish or slam shut behind me. But it remained, a stark boundary to the place I had just escaped. My pulse quickened as I pressed forward, unsure where my feet would take me. Then a door appeared at the end of the hall, marked with a flickering light. I felt another pull, beckoning me towards it. In that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more awaited me, something beyond the giggles and taunts of those strange children. As I reached for the next door, I heard footsteps behind me. They were soft but deliberate. I whipped around, heart racing, fully expecting to confront the shadows creeping from the far end of the hall. Instead, I was greeted by silence. I turned back to the door, cautiously pushing it open, but a voice cried out, clear and frantic, "Don't go in!" I paused, caught between two worlds, not knowing what to believe. I froze, my hand hovering over the door handle. The warning echoed in my head like a fire alarm. "Who said that?" I called out, but only silence answered. Anxiety clawed at my throat again. Was I truly alone? "Please, you can't go in there." The voice sounded closer this time, almost desperate. It was the urgency in those words that made me feel unsteady. I stepped back from the door, scanning the hallway, looking for any sign of the person who had reached out to me. "What's going to happen if I do?" I shouted, hoping whoever it was would respond. My voice seemed to bounce back, mocking my fear. Then, with a suddenness that startled me, a shadow flickered across the wall, sharp and quick. I spun around, only to find nothing but the same oppressive darkness. The air thickened again, a weight pushing down on my shoulders. "Don't listen to them," the voice pleaded.
"They want to trick you." I gripped the top and key tighter, willing my heart to calm. "Trick me how?" I shouted back, panic infusing my words. I wanted to scream, to run back through the door I had come from, but something held me in place. Then I noticed it. Just out of the corner of my eye, something shimmered. I turned my head sharply and saw a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a girl, her form hazy, like she was made of smoke and light. She looked no older than I was, maybe even younger, with wild hair and wide, frightened eyes. "Listen to me. You need to go back," she urged, stepping closer. But each inch she moved seemed to draw me into a deeper mystery. "They're waiting for you, and it's not a game." "Who's waiting?" I managed to stutter out, voice trembling. The girl looked toward the door, her fear palpable. "Not just the kids from this house," she said, lowering her voice as if afraid the shadows might hear. "Other things, things you can't see, things that want to play, but their games aren't fun. You'll lose more than just this game. Please." Her words spurred me into action. "Jake!" I yelled again. The hallway echoed my call, amplifying my desperation. I couldn't leave him, but the fear that wrapped around my chest made it hard to breathe. The girl took another step toward me, urgency in her voice. "Trust me, you have to leave now." I glanced back at the door, where the light flickered invitingly. I wanted to believe nothing bad could be inside, that it was just a room like any other. But a glimmer of dread settled in my stomach. I looked at the girl once more. "I can't just leave him. I can't." She sighed, exasperated. "Then you don't understand. He might not even be here anymore. The door is a trap. Open it, and you might join them." Her words hit like a punch. I thought of Jake, how I had to find him. But what if going through that door meant losing more? Just then, I heard the whispers again, clearer and more insistent. "We're waiting," they sang. The girl's eyes widened. "You're running out of time. Choose." In one frantic moment, the floor shook beneath my feet. A sudden echoing crash at the far end of the hall. Then I felt it, a chilling presence behind me. A chill skated up my spine. I didn't have much time. I had to decide. Stay and confront whatever was coming, or turn back to find Jake. But which choice led to safety? My heart raced as I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The girl's warning replayed in my mind, blending with the eerie whispers that seemed to grow louder. "They're waiting," they taunted, almost like a twisted game. I can't leave him," I stammered, trying to muster some courage. The weight of indecision pressed heavily on me. I looked toward the flickering door, then back to the girl.
She looked more frantic by the second, glancing nervously between me and the darkness that lay beyond. Just then, the wall behind me rattled. The rhythmic crash morphed into a strange resonance. The voice outside continued to beckon, and beyond it, the darkness stirred. The next decision loomed: face the shadow or trust the key. Time was slipping away. I took a deep breath, the key heavy in my palm. The laughter outside shifted to taunts, and I could feel the shadow lurking, waiting for us to make a move. "Do we trust it?" I whispered, fighting the urge to bolt out of our hiding space. "Or do we stay here?" "It's a risk," she admitted, glancing at the key, "but I think it's all we have." With that, I squeezed the key tight. "On 3, I said, heart pounding in rhythm with the laughter echoing through the darkness. 1, 2, 3. We burst out from our cramped hiding spot, and almost instantly the laughter faded into a haunting silence. I glanced back, not sure if the shadows would follow, but they remained just that, shadows. I turned my attention to the narrow hallway stretching out before us and the flickering light at the end. "Let's go," I urged, and we sprinted toward the glimmering promise of escape, the pulse of my fear driving us forward. As we reached the door, I stopped and pulled out the key. "What if it doesn't work?" I muttered. The girl looked around nervously, her eyes flashing with worry, but I pressed on. "Here goes nothing," I whispered, inserting the key into the lock. It fit perfectly, clicking with a satisfying sound. With a shaking hand, I turned the key. The door creaked open, revealing bright light beyond. "Quick!" the girl shouted, pushing me forward, and we stepped into the light. The air shifted around us, and as we crossed the threshold, I felt an overwhelming rush of warmth. The cacophony of whispers and laughter faded into silence. We were out. I turned to look back, but the door had vanished as soon as we stepped through. Panting, I glanced around. We were in a brightly lit field. The sun streamed down, casting long shadows. The laughter, though, felt trapped somewhere in the corners of my mind. It felt miles away, yet it still echoed faintly. "Is this real?" the girl asked, disbelief coloring her voice. "I think so," I replied, my heart still racing. But even as I spoke, a nagging doubt sank in, a question that wouldn't leave me. I turned back in the direction we came, half expecting to see the shadows emerge again. "Where's Jake?" I wondered aloud, the absence weighing heavily on my chest. The girl looked down, fidgeting with her hands. I'm not sure. This place is strange. There are doorways everywhere, some leading to unexpected places." "So we're not really safe?" The weight of her words settled in the air. "No, it's like a web. You can get turned around easily if you're not careful." I felt my stomach twist. Had we truly escaped, or had we merely stepped into a new game, one with different rules? "Then we need to find him," I declared, determination fueling my voice despite the dread pooling in my gut. "Are you sure you want to go back? What if—" "I can't leave him behind," I interrupted. The thought sent a sharp pain through my heart. There has to be a way. I turned away from the field, instinctively following the faint echoes of laughter that seemed to beckon us back, almost tethering me to the house. "This way," I said, uncertainly leading the way. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching us, that something darker lurked just outside our vision. Shadows flitted across my peripheral vision, but whenever I turned, they disappeared. The girl's voice broke the silence. "You really think Jake's still in there?" I hesitated, not wanting to think about the alternative. He has to be. If we survived, he might have too. Maybe he's just lost. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. The laughter floated through the air again, a chilling reminder that the children's game was far from over. With each step deeper into the unknown, a feeling of foreboding settled heavily. I could sense that the house had opened its doors to us once again, but this time there were consequences. What had begun as just a game of hide and seek had twisted into something greater than I could ever have imagined. I felt the lingering weight of the key in my pocket. It felt like more than an object. It felt like a pact, a way to play a game that might cost more than I was willing to pay. The laughter echoed once more, and somewhere, deep down, I knew there were answers waiting. But curiosity and dread danced teasingly together. I might have escaped, but I also felt trapped, a player in a game where the rules were as opaque as the shadows that surrounded us. "Are you ready?" I turned to the girl, my heart racing in anticipation of the choice we were about to make, unaware of whether we would find Jake or become the next participants in the dark story of this place. The answer to that question hung in the air like the laughter, sweet, thrilling, and utterly terrifying. As we stepped into the threshold of what was next, I wondered if I would ever truly escape, or if the game had changed me forever.